What's up, everyone? Welcome back. We're doing another Film Club movie review of our pick from this week. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's because you don't follow the Filmstruck Film Club on Instagram or Facebook or this channel. And if you did, then you would know that Filmstruck Film Club, I know Filmstruck doesn't exist anymore. So maybe there'll be a name change in the future. Maybe. But we watch a movie a week. It operates just like a book club. Typically, we pick a movie. It'll be from like the Criterion channel or hopefully somewhere where it'll be readily available. And you have that whole week at your leisure. Watch that movie. And then at the end of the week, I post a little video like this. Feel free to let me know what you thought of the film. And then we start the whole ball over again. This was our 116th film? Not entirely sure. But I thought it would be fun to watch a silent film. What an idea. I don't know how many silent films you've seen. Maybe the only one you've ever seen is The Artist. And that's okay. But I will say we've watched a couple in this club already. Some of our earliest picks were The Passion of Joan of Arc, which if you haven't seen, is one of the greatest movies ever. We watched The Phantom Carriage, which is also astounding. We did watch a Charlie Chaplin film in this club, but it was The Great Dictator, so it wasn't one of his silent classics. But this week, we watched Buster Keaton's The Cameraman. And I will say, if you have never seen a Buster Keaton film before, this is an interesting one to start with. It is one of his later films. It's kind of considered his last great masterpiece, and we'll get into why in just a second. But there were really like just a handful of superstars in the silent comedy era. Charlie Chaplin, Harold Lloyd, Buster Keaton. There's also Fatty Arbuckle. There's some really great names, some really exquisite comedians from the era. But Buster Keaton is one of the most famous of them all. He wrote, directed, and starred in many of his own films. He had his own film studio. One of his films, The General, is very widely considered one of the very best movies of all time. On the Sight and Sound poll, AFI 100 Greatest Films of All Time. It's in the top 10, I think. So Buster Keaton is someone that if you've never gotten a chance to witness yourself, you don't even need a Criterion channel subscription to check this guy out. The beauty of silent films is almost all of them are in HD on YouTube for free. So there's that. But yeah, some other classics of Buster's that we haven't watched in this club, but after you watch The Cameraman, maybe you'll want to check some of these out. There's The General, Steamboat Bill Jr., which has that iconic the house falling and Buster standing in the window. It's been recreated by the Looney Tunes and the like all over the place. Sherlock Jr., Our Hospitality, The Passionate Plumber. These are all Buster Keaton movies. I have not seen them all. I've actually only seen The Cameraman, The General, and Sherlock Jr. I really need to watch Steamboat Bill Jr. because it just looks hilarious. But some really incredible things to note here. This was his first film with MGM, which was, if you know anything about Buster Keaton, it was kind of the beginning of the end for him. He signed this big multi-picture deal with MGM that started to limit his creative control, this film kind of being the last one that he really had full reign over. He's not even the credited director on this film. Edward Sedgwick is the credited director of this film. But it's widely known that Buster was the creative mastermind behind a lot of these films from The Cameraman before. But I found this really interesting. I just did this research, and 92 years ago today of me filming this on January 26th, Buster signed that contract with MGM. So it's the 92nd anniversary of Buster signing that contract that, he has been quoted as saying it was the greatest professional mistake of his life, signing that contract. But we did get this magnificent film, The Cameraman. It does have 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. It made a staggering $700+ thousand in its domestic gross, which I'm no economist, but adjusting for inflation, this movie was probably very successful. It was also recognized by the National Film Registry. The Library of Congress has bestowed this film as culturally important. And if you're not familiar with the National Film Registry, that's a great source to just look at, particularly American films that have, I guess, standed the test of time and are being predicted to continue to do just that. But so enough of all that. You should definitely find out as much as you can about Buster Keaton. You should watch his films because he is a genius. Charlie Chaplin, The Tramp, is one icon of the era, but Buster's deadpan face and his incredible physical comedy and ability for slapstick humor is kind of unmatched. And this film was just such a good time. I laughed a lot while watching this movie. It's almost 100 years old, and this movie still cracked me up out loud. I was out loud laughing. There were also some incredible technical elements happening that I didn't realize we were doing in the 20s. Right away in the first couple minutes of the film, there's a green screen moment. We see a cameraman filming. They had to turn the wheel, right, to film shit. And he's standing on the battlefield of this World War I newsreel footage or something. But he's clearly not there. So I don't know how they did that all the way back then, but kudos to them. Also, real quick before I get into plot stuff, something really worth noting with this film, and it is certainly true for a lot of films from before 1930, is that the film that they were shot on and printed on is very brittle and delicate and doesn't actually age very well. So thank God for the people at the Criterion Collection, because the version that I watched on the Criterion channel is a 4K restoration that only came out in June of 2020. It was long thought to be a lost film. You couldn't watch it. In 1968, a copy of the film was found in Paris, but it was kind of poorly held together. And then it takes all the way until 1991 to find another copy of this movie that was actually a little bit better quality. And so they were able to splice both of these prints together and digitally restore it. And now we have a beautiful, beautiful looking and sounding version of this film that now it won't be lost. We'll have this thing forever. And it looks like it was shot yesterday. That's how good the restoration was. But let's get into what this movie is. So Buster is a cameraman. He takes tintype photos of people, which if you don't know what a tintype photo is, I didn't really either, but he says, you want your tintype photo taken? They make great ashtrays, which I thought was funny. But he falls in love with this random girl that he finds, and turns out she works at the MGM newsreel place. And so he simultaneously is trying to get a date with her and trying to get a job as a newsreel cameraman for MGM. It winds up not really working out for him. He double exposes the footage and he kind of gets laughed out of the place. But of course, his just physical comedy with this camera, because mind you, nowadays, our cameras are like this. I'm filming right now on my telephone. Anyway, the cameras back in the day were way more cumbersome. They had these huge long sticks that they were on. It was this huge box, and you had to turn the film and the whole thing. And so him manipulating this thing, he can't get in and out of a room to save his life. It winds up being a great gag throughout the movie. But just some really great set pieces in this movie too. There's an excellent part where he's just out trying to get footage to sell. And he goes to the Yankee Stadium for the Yankees game, and he goes, "Is there a Yankee game today?" And they go, "Yeah, in St. Louis." So he sets up a camera in the middle of the baseball diamond at Yankee Stadium and does a whole pantomime sequence as every player on the field. And it's such a cute moment. And from what I understand, it was not in the script. He improvised the whole thing. He was just like, let me just go do something here. And it's magnificent. There's also just some killer set pieces, man. There's a pool scene. There's a scene where they go to a place. It was a real place in Venice, California, called The Plunge, I believe. Maybe look that up. Maybe Google that. But it's like you're watching a documentary, basically, of, it's 1928, and here's all these people in this giant indoor pool. And there's a hilarious sequence where him and this guy are in a changing room. It's a very tight room, and they're trying to get in their bathing suits, and it's a very long sequence, but it just continues to get funnier. The one guy is taking off his suspenders, and it goes around Buster's head, and he's like, wait, hold on. He takes off his shirt, and it goes on the other guy. It's a classic bit. But yeah, man, there's this I'm just going through notes here, but I was just astounded. Honestly, I think I might have even used that word already, but this guy, man, Buster Keaton, was so smart. And one of the things, I guess, that really kind of soured his relationship with MGM was purely by the way that he worked. He learned from working with Fatty Arbuckle. It's kind of like, if you can get the beginning and the end figured out, the middle will take care of itself. We'll be horsing around on set, and we'll just be like, what's this? Oh, I could come up with something funny to do with this, and then they would film it. And so when it gets to MGM, and the way that they run things over there is it's all got to be on paper. Every bit has to be written out. Everything has to be pre-planned, and that was just not Buster's style. So even though he was able to pull it off for the most part in The Cameraman, he was never really given that freedom ever again, and they really kind of handcuffed his creativity. Which is not to say that he didn't get to go do some great work. I mean, he did, and this is something I didn't really know. He continued to work through the 50s and even the 60s. He was an old man doing bits. When the Marx Brothers were the biggest thing, he was out writing bits and coming up with gags for them as an uncredited person that just worked for MGM. So it was a bit of a fall from grace for him. It's kind of like you're one of the biggest stars in the world, and now you're like stunt coordinator for commercials. You know, it's like nothing against stunt coordinating for commercials, but it's not quite the same. You know, it brings to mind another famous person, Orson Welles, who kind of had a similar situation. But yeah, this I was just so tickled, man. I've been trying to stick with some of the lighter fare to start the year. You know, we watched Monsoon Wedding as our first pick of the year. We watched The Lady Killers, which was another just stupendous comedy, and now this. And so it's so nice to get this kind of time capsule of humor. And not to mention, there's parts of this film that, because of the 4K restoration, it looks so good. And you're seeing parts of Los Angeles that just absolutely don't look like that anymore. I thought this film was entirely shot in New York City. Some of it is shot in New York City, but a much greater amount of it is shot in downtown Los Angeles and in the streets of Hollywood. There's a great sequence where he runs after a fire truck and jumps on and grabs the ladder, and there's this great shot of him kind of like with his tripod going along with the fire truck because he thinks he's going to the fire that he's going to go film, but instead the fire truck just pulls right into a fire station. It's a really great little gag. But even when he takes Sally out for that date and he's sitting on the wheel well of the bus, it's just iconic. Like, I want it on as a painting. It's such a... this, you know what this movie reminded me of? If you've ever seen City Lights by Chaplin, if you haven't, watch this and then go watch that and tell me if you're like, oh yeah, I see what you mean. But just the very pure love story. This guy who's just infatuated. One of my favorite sequences. He has given his number to Sally, the girl that he likes, and she calls him, and he answers the phone after he has to run up and down the stairs to get the phone in this amazing set piece. It's like a 5 or 6 level house. And if you look at it, it's very like Wes Anderson-y. Like, you can kind of see Wes Anderson borrows a little bit from this kind of like early hipster Buster Keaton style. But I love it. She calls him and she's like, my date canceled and I'd love to go on a date with you. He runs out of the house, and we like splice between her continuing to talk on her phone and him just booking it down the street. And right when she hangs up the phone, he's right behind her, and she turns around and she goes, that was fast. And it's just so pure, you know. Another silent film that I didn't mention that we did watch, actually the more recent one, was Sidewalk Stories. Great film from 1989, independent silent film, kind of like The Artist, but before The Artist, which I've mentioned now twice. Best Picture, 2000, blah, blah, blah. You know, that one, you watched it. Anyway, I got a little sidetracked and off topic, but I fucking loved this opportunity to witness Buster's absolute genius and also then to watch the supplemental material that was on the Criterion channel. There's some really great stuff where proper historians that know his work and his life they told me everything that I'm telling you, and I'm leaving out a tremendous amount. So if you found yourself really enjoying this film and really enjoying Buster, you should go ahead and check those out as well. There's a whole world of silent film that is there for us, and it's all free, really. I mean, they're all on YouTube. Like, if you look up, even just the 20 best silent films ever, you can find pretty much all of them on YouTube. So if you get the itch to travel back in time, go for it. Let me know which ones you watch. Let me know which ones you absolutely love and need to be seen by everyone, and I would love to add them right here so that we can watch them together. Yeah. Like, comment, subscribe, follow us at Filmstruck Film Club. That's where you're going to find out about all the movies. My buddy Groot and I love that you hung out. I know that this is kind of a long one, but you know what, man? Buster Keaton deserves our time and energy, and I just wanted to make sure that you heard it from here, that he's the shit, and the cameraman was really good. So, we'll have another pick for you soon, probably tomorrow. And in the meantime, enjoy yourselves. Let me know what you thought about the cameraman. I would love to know. So, signing off. I'll catch you later.